Hello, Lost fans. Namaste. If you're not a Lost fan that has viewed this series in its entirety, then I kindly suggest that you hit the road because we're about to go swimming in spoilers together. Though before I dive into the review, I first wanted to preface it by reminding you that the statement made in this video's title is simply my opinion. And my objective here is to relay my knowledge of, thoughts on, and analysis of what I believe to be the greatest television series of all time, rather than to try and convince you to agree with the statement made in this video's title. Chapter 1, Introduction. Lost is my favorite television show of all time, and it is, in my opinion, the greatest story ever told. I watched the series upon its original airing, and since then have watched the series from beginning to end 5 to 6 times, though there are several individual episodes and runs of episodes throughout the show's 6 seasons that I have watched between 20 and 50 times. I have listened to every single one of the writers/executive producers Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse's Lost-centric podcasts during the show's original run, and have had multiple phases of listening since the show ended. I own the Lost Encyclopedia, as well as every single season of the show on DVD. I have also viewed every single writer/actor interview that is available to watch. I truly know this show inside and out, and have only loved the show more as time has progressed. Chapter 2, General Series Review. Lost is a brilliant series. It features an amazing and intriguing story with a vast array of excellent, distinct, diverse characters. The score is breathtaking, the setting and cinematography are impeccable, and the show contains fantastic, profound, and impactful themes that remain throughout the entirety of the series, making the overall narrative seamless, cohesive, and consistent. Now, the primary themes of Lost are as follows: destiny/purpose, science versus faith, coincidence versus fate, letting go, human connection and its importance / interconnectedness. Season 1 is the perfect first chapter. I love that it takes its time and just dips its toe into the island's lore / mythology. It tells brilliant character stories which converge at season's end, which gives the season somewhat of a sense of encapsulation, though it organically teases potential upcoming routes the show may take. I love the hatch/button concept, which also happens to be the perfect representation of the science versus faith theme. I love how the others are handled/revealed. We've got the early season fake out, in which we believe we're being introduced to the seemingly barbaric others, though it turns out to be the tail section survivors. A few episodes later, a hidden Jin and Mr. Echo catch a glimpse of the others' dirtied legs through a collection of bushes and trees, continuing to maintain their ominous nature. In episode number 11 of the season, Jack and company confront Tom and what is ultimately revealed to be a large quantity of others, who are each menacingly represented by torchlight in the pitch black night. Then in mid to late season 2, Kate discovers the others' costume department essentially, which consists of fake bushy beards and makeup, which suggests, and it is ultimately confirmed, that the others have been putting on somewhat of an act, wanting the 815 survivors to believe them to be shabby and primitive. I love the additions of Desmond, Ben, Bernard, as well as the previously mentioned Mr. Echo. I love the introduction of Pierre Chang and the Dharma Initiative, as well as the full official Smoke Monster reveal. Both the Ben Locke dynamic and the Desmond Charlie dynamic are major highlights. I also find Ben's cult-like tactics to be very interesting. I love Jacob's sparse, though effective and supernatural presence, as well as the character addition of Juliet. I dig the way the "are they the oceanic survivors dead" concept is implemented. I adore the final run of episodes and how the show reinvents itself in the season's final moments in unprecedented fashion. I love the concise nature of the season and how that amps up the stakes and intensity, as well as its clear-cut two-act structure. The primary question of Act 1, episodes 1 through 8, being who ultimately gets off of the island? Who are the members of the Oceanic Six? The primary question of Act 2, episodes 9 through 14, how exactly does the Oceanic Six get off the island? I dig the character additions of Kimi, as well as Miles, Frank, and Matthew Abaddon, not to mention Daniel Faraday, whose dynamic with Desmond is a Season 4 highlight. I adore the Desmond-Penny love story and tapping into the Ben-Whitmore rivalry, as well as the rules. I dig the commencement, or rather continuation, of the Ben-Saeed dynamic. Season 5 features the best of cinematic time travel. I adore how it's used to serve the story and further develop the show's characters. Richard Alpert is a highlight. I also dig Eloise Hawking's implementation. This season is bold and crazy in the best possible way, but always maintains the show's primary themes. The Destiny theme is literally more prominent than ever. I love the continuing evolution of central characters, namely Jack, Sawyer, Sun, and Juliet. I dig the implementation of the why and how did they come back to the island question. It's exciting that the pieces are finally starting to come together brilliantly, may I add, primarily in regards to Jacob and the Man in Black / Smoke Monster. In general, I love that the show is starting to really delve into its biggest mysteries. The finale features an amazing cliffhanger, a phenomenal setup for the final season. It is the perfect finish. It's wonderfully unconventional in its concepts and storytelling, and brings the show full circle in a number of ways. It also answers lingering questions in incredibly satisfying fashion. I dig the implementation of Dogen, Lennon, and, after many mentions, the Temple. I adore the character / story completions and the organic shift in score style. Chapter 3A: People's Misconceptions. And mind you, this is purely anecdotal. I'm going to list a collection of said misconceptions, followed by when exactly in this review I'm going to address them and subsequently debunk them. They didn't answer any questions. Discussed in Chapter 3B. Well, doesn't matter in the end. Discussed in 3B. It is never explained why the polar bears are on the island. Discussed in 3B. They made it up as they went along. Discussed in Chapter 3C. Charlie could have escaped the Looking Glass hatch. He didn't have to die. Discussed in Chapter 4. They were dead the whole time. Discussed in Part 2 of this review. Chapter 3B: Addressing the show's biggest mysteries. Why are they on the island? Are they there for a reason? There are two island deities, Jacob and the Man in Black. Jacob believes that human beings can be genuinely good, that flawed, broken individuals can be redeemed. The Man in Black is essentially a misanthrope. He believes that people are simply greedy and corrupt, and that it is in their very nature to sin. Jacob brings people to the island to prove him wrong. More specifically, Jacob is the protector of the island, and those he brings to the island are candidates or nominees to one day take over his job. What is the meaning / importance of the numbers? 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. Hurley's lottery numbers that ultimately lead him to the island. They lead Danielle Rousseau and her team to the island as well. They also constantly surround our characters on and off island. Early in Season 1, we learn that the reward for capturing convict Kate is $23,000. That reward leads to an arrest, which brings Kate onto Oceanic 815, which leads her to the island. In the Season 1 finale, Hugo races through an airport to catch Flight 815, during which we watch a quick glimpse of the backs of the jerseys of a young team of soccer players. The numbers on the jerseys, 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, respectively. Jack's seat number on Flight 815, 23. Ana Lucia's, 42. The numbers on the safety deposit box belonging to the devious Anthony Cooper featured in Season 2, 15, 16. In the Season 4 premiere, Hugo sees a vision of the deceased Charlie Pace standing next to the ho-hos in a convenience store. Later in that same episode, Jack and Hugo play horse at Santa Rosa, the game coming to an end once Jack receives an H and an O, H being the 8th letter in the alphabet, O being the 15th. The numbers are also featured on the speedometer of Hugo and his father's Camaro in Part 1 of the Season 4 finale. Now, in episode number 4 of the final season, we are introduced to Jacob's cave, the walls of which feature a plethora of names, Jacob's candidates, each candidate having an assigned number. As the Man in Black puts it, Jacob had a thing for numbers. The final candidates and their assigned numbers: 4, Locke; 8, Reyes; 15, Ford; 16, Jurah, 23, Shepard, 42, Kwan. Now, as previously mentioned, Jacob and the Man in Black are supernatural entities. They do not age. Jacob has a magical lighthouse which features Jacob's candidates alongside their assigned numbers, as well as a reflection of their past homes in a mystical mirror. Jacob can manipulate reality and time on and off island. The numbers aren't Hurley's numbers, they're Jacob's. He utilizes them, surrounds individuals with them, or influences others to use them for the purpose of leading people to the island, as well as it potentially, according to the Man in Black, being a hobby or obsessive thing. Remember, much of the show is essentially a game played between Jacob and the Man in Black, the 815 survivors and the rest of the island's inhabitants being their pieces. Now I'm going to kill 6 Hurley birds with 1 stone as we delve into some of the show's most prominent mysteries, each of them connected in one way or another. Jacob, the Smoke Monster, Adam and Eve, the Black Rock, the Four-Toed Statue, and Richard Alpert. Let's start at the beginning with the character of Mother, the island's earliest inhabitant in terms of what is shown to us in the Lost timeline. A pregnant Claudia shipwrecks on the island. She gives birth to Jacob and the unnamed Man in Black before Mother kills Claudia and takes in the twin brothers as her own. Mother tells Jacob and the Man in Black that one day one of them will have to take over her job as protector of the island. She enforces a rule over Jacob and his brother that the two are unable to fatally harm one another. Ultimately, Jacob becomes the new protector of the island as he adopts the same powers as the unaging Mother, which brings us to the Smoke Monster. The Man in Black kills Mother, and Jacob witnesses this. So Jacob sends the Man in Black into a mysterious cavern referred to as the Heart of the Island, or the Source, and Mother stated that if one were to enter the cave, a fate worse than death would await them. So into the cave goes the Man in Black before the Smoke Monster, Jacob's accidental creation, emerges. As we know, the Smoke Monster can take on the appearance of others that are deceased, but going forward in the chronological timeline of the show, he primarily maintains his original appearance as the Man in Black, though as we see in the season 5 finale with Locke, he leaves the physical body behind when embodying someone. This allows Jacob to put his brother and quote-unquote mother to rest in the caves, as we learn the true identity / origin of Adam and Eve, the skeletons introduced in season 1 episode 6. Which brings us to the Black Rock. Jacob brings the Black Rock to the island for the same reason he brings any ship or plane to the island. Once the Black Rock finally nears the island, a giant monsoon ensues, so the Black Rock rides a gigantic wave directly into the head of the Four-Toed Statue, breaking the statue, leaving only a foot intact and sending the Black Rock into the jungle. The statue, or what's left of it, is ultimately revealed to be Jacob's home. Now let's discuss one of the individuals that was aboard the Black Rock, Richard Alpert, the unaging man. Richard arrived on the island in the mid-1800s, and being the lone survivor from his ship, he is instantly at the center of a tug-of-war match between Jacob and the Man in Black, the two vying for Richard's trust and potential control over him. Richard ultimately chooses the side of Jacob, who decides to employ Richard as his representative, his advisor, an intermediary between Jacob and those he brings to the island. Richard asks Jacob to bring his wife back from the dead as a form of payment, but Jacob claims to be unable to do so. He is also unable to grant Richard's second request, to absolve him of his sins. He is, however, able to grant Richard's final wish, to be able to live forever. He places a hand on Richard and makes it so. The only reason the character of Walt is used more sparingly as the series progresses is due to the actor's age. Given that Malcolm David Kelly began the show right before entering puberty, he didn't fit into the timeline of the show. Seasons 1 to 3 takes place over the course of a few months. Given that obstacle, the writers do a phenomenal job of doing the character of Walt justice and fulfilling his destiny. Let's look at his presence and prevalence season by season. In season 1, we learn that Walt is special, whether or not he knows it. He possesses these supernatural abilities, which in a couple instances resemble something like The Shining. He is brought to the island along with all of the other candidates aboard Oceanic 815. Walt, evidently a very important candidate, is taken by the others at the end of season 1. This is done in barbaric fashion, but that is not the fault of Jacob. It is the fault of Ben, who, as Richard states to Locke in season 3, has essentially lost his way as a leader. here. And as we learn, Ben is an emotionally warped, power-hungry individual who may not know what the island wants. He certainly doesn't know how to properly acquire what the island wants, which is undoubtedly a reason that Ben's tumor develops, but I digress. Now we know that throughout Season 2, Walt is in the others' captivity, and they're conducting experiments on him. Multiple others know of Walt's special abilities, notably Tom, and we see that near the end of Season 2, B. Clue threatens Walt with the room. I'm assuming this to be Room 23, the brainwashing room. Walt is ultimately essentially used as a trade chip in order for Michael to bring other very prevalent candidates to the others: Jack, Sawyer, Kate, and Hugo. My personal theory is that Jacob allowed for candidate Walt to leave on account of his young age and innocence, as he has sympathy for those who have been in similar situations as he, or those who have experiences that mirror those whom he cares about, a la Kate being crossed out from Jacob's cave of candidates due to her becoming a mother. So Walt leaves the island, though the island is not yet done with him. Let's talk about Walt circa Seasons 3 through 5. Walt appears at Season 3's end to inform a defeated, injured Locke that he still has work to do in order to protect the island, another Shining-like situation. In the Season 4 finale, Walt visits Hugo at Santa Rosa. He inquires about his father and asks about the purpose for the Oceanic 6 line. In Season 5, John Locke / Jeremy Bentham visits Walt when he's on a mission to reunite the Oceanic survivors who had returned to the mainland in order to fulfill their destiny and return to the island. Locke decides not to bring Walt back to the island, though before he departs, Walt informs him of a dream / vision that he had, which centered on Locke, again in Shining / soothsayer fashion. It was essentially a warning to John in his quest, which as we know leads him to his death. Now on to Walt's most important and satisfying chapter, the show's epilogue, The New Man in Charge. Ben, evidently a changed and redeemed as much as he can be individual, recruits Walt, a now mentally broken and grieving young man residing at Santa Rosa, to bring him back to the island. We cut to the mental hospital's exterior as Ben leads Walt to a parked Dharma bus in which we find our current protector of the island, Hugo. Hurley tells Walt that he should return to the island, the place he has always belonged. Hurley wants to speak to Walt about a job, implying that Walt is set to ultimately take over as protector of the island, or at the very least for now earn himself some new special position created by Hurley. The polar bears are first introduced into the show in Pilot Part 2. It is one of the show's earliest questions. Why and how are polar bears on this island? Well, our first clue comes in episode 202, when we momentarily see a Dharma logo on a shark's fin. From this quick shot alone, we can infer that the Dharma Initiative was conducting tests on animals. This is confirmed in early Season 3, when Jack is held captive by the others in the old Dharma Hydra Station, a former aquarium. And right next door is Kate and Sawyer being held captive in what was once the Dharma polar bear cages. Let's skip forward to episode 402, when Charlotte is doing her archaeology routine in the Sahara Desert. She finds the skeleton of a polar bear wearing a collar, which bears a Dharma logo. We, later in Season 4, see a shell-shocked Ben suddenly appear in this exact same location at which the bear skeleton was uncovered. It is in the Season 4 finale, and expanded upon in episode 507, that this particular location in the Sahara is the exit point, after one turns the Man in Black's very electromagnetically fueled wheel. So it is only safe to infer, before it is confirmed by Pierre Chang in The New Man in Charge, that one of the experiments Dharma was conducting in regards to the bears involved using them to test out the wheel, which is why a Dharma polar bear carcass is found in the Sahara, the same location Ben ended up after turning the wheel, as did Locke. We get our final nugget of polar bear info in the previously mentioned Lost epilogue, in a new orientation video, or rather one that we, the viewing audience, are watching for the first time. Pierre Chang references Dharma's zoology sector. He specifically states that polar bears are perfect candidates for memory tests, undoubtedly having to do with the mechanized gizmo that Sawyer had to deal with in early Season 3. Chang very vaguely refers to another phase of testing, at which point we view footage of the orchid, under which of course is the wheel, a nice little expansion on the Season 4, Season 5 polar bear stuff. This is the only big mystery that is addressed in expository, rather blunt fashion, so I initially wasn't particularly fond of it, though as I've gone through the series multiple times since first seeing this mystery addressed in episode 612, the answer and the way it is given has grown on me. Firstly, the individual who inquires about the Whispers, once he believes to have figured out exactly what they are, is Hurley. Hurley is a lovable, honest, authentic, straight up says what he means kind of guy, so the fact that he inquires about the Whispers so bluntly, stating, wait, I think I know what these things are, and asking, so that's what the Whispers are? To confirm the answer given to him by Michael, which is pretty true to the character of Hugo. Now let's talk about the answer itself. Michael states that the Whispers belong to the individuals who are spiritually stuck on the island, unable to move on because of what they have done, which is definitely interesting. Now in season 1, Rousseau states to Sayid that the Whispers belong to the others, so you may be thinking, doesn't the ultimate answer given by Michael clash with Danielle's theory from season 1? No, allow me to explain. Michael is a member of the collective Whispers, so what he says in regards to the Whispers is the truth. The reason Danielle says what she says to Sayid is because many years ago, depicted in episode 512, when Ben kidnapped Alex from Rousseau, to encourage her to stay away from the others, he says to her, every time you hear whispers, you run the other way. Now let's apply Michael's answer as to what the Whispers are to what Ben says to Rousseau. And mind you, who the hell knows if Ben has any understanding of what the Whispers are? The others themselves are not the source of the Whispers. I mean, it only makes sense that the spirits of the island would frequently surround what are essentially the island's natives in the others. Now, we know Whispers Michael is deep down a good dude, while I'm sure there are sinister, unrepentant spirits on the island as well, and the Whispers often appear prior to the others' arrival. So the Whispers in this particular situation would essentially be one of, or both of, two things. One, a warning to encourage those nearing the others to fuck off in the other direction. Two, an announcement of the others' arrival to frighten those approaching. I also just wanted to mention another thing or two to help display that the Whispers truly are the souls/spirits of the island who haven't or can't move on, not the others themselves as Rousseau stated back in season 1. Firstly, Rousseau was traumatized when Alex was stolen from her, if she wasn't already traumatized by the smoke monster infecting her team, not to mention that she essentially survived in the island's jungles alone for 16 years. So she may not be the most mentally stable, reliable source. For example, in the season 1 finale, Rousseau states to Jack, Kate and company that the smoke monster is a quote-unquote security system protecting the island. But the reason that she's saying that is because that's what she was told years ago by the manipulative and seductive smoke monster who at the time was inhabiting the recently deceased corpse of Danielle's former team member, Montand. Now let's discuss the production / behind the scenes of the show, beginning with the pre-production process. J.J. Abrams, Damon Lindelof, and Jeffrey Lieber pitch a show to ABC about a crazy, mysterious, special island on which a plane crashes. We learn about and ultimately explore the supernatural place. ABC wants the trio to develop the thing. So, post-pilot, season 1 is plotted and planned out, at least mostly, with general ideas of where the show could go after the first season being discussed as well. The actual writing of specific episodes, which have been planned out by the writing collective, occurs before and during production of the show. It was essentially the same process for season 2. All the while, Lost execs and the network discuss a potential end date for the show. The network wants a 10-season run, while the Lost execs want a 4-season run. Up until either episode 306's airing or 309's airing, the production process for season 3 was quite similar to that of the show's first 2 seasons. But at this point, the writers felt somewhat backed into a corner and felt the need to keep the 815 survivors on the island because they, at the time, didn't know how long the show would end up being. They didn't want to blow their load in season 3 if the show was going to end up being 9 seasons in length, which was the network's desire following the Lost exec's pitch of a 4-season length. Something to note, although the writers felt a bit creatively backed into a corner in the first chunk of season 3, I never personally felt that or got that impression during that or any other portion of the show. There is never a lull throughout the show where I lost interest, never. So after the airing of either 306, the end of the first block of season 3 episodes, or 309, generally considered to be the weakest episode of the show, the Lost execs and the network came to an agreement that following the show's third season, there would be 3 more seasons consisting of 16 episodes each, which would only slightly alter due to the 2008 writer's strike. Therefore, Damon and Carlton were able to structure the remainder of Lost into 3 final chapters, a beginning, a middle, and an end to the second half of the show, allowing them the ability to properly develop and then complete character arcs and storylines, as well as answer the big questions with enough time remaining in the show to really carefully and effectively decide on the placement of these major revelations. I am now going to chronologically delve into Lost's greatest episodes and moments, speaking specifically of seasons 1 through 3. Walkabout is a beautifully told story. It's cleverly told as well, primarily in regards to the collection of shoe perspective shots. Walkabout features an incredibly powerful final scene. Terry O'Quinn's performance here is excellent, including his delivery of what will become John Locke's iconic catchphrase, "Don't tell me what I can't do." The concept alone of this special island allowing a formerly wheelchair-bound man the ability to walk again is profound. Even more so when accompanied by Giacchino's beautiful score. The final shot is fantastic. It's visually brilliant, but also impactfully symbolic, as a content Locke is watching his crippled past burn away. This is a great, captivating, tragic story, which really encapsulates Locke as a character. I love all the Locke and Boone stuff, which is classic Lost in my opinion, in regards to the island speaking to Locke and guiding him through his dreams. The final scene of this episode is one of the show's greatest. Terry O'Quinn is phenomenal. His breakdown after Anthony Cooper has stolen his kidney is simply heart-wrenching. Giacchino is masterful, and I love the visceral tonal shift between tragedy and despair in the form of Locke's breakdown after being conned, as well as Boone's ultimately fatal injury, and sudden hopefulness in the form of the light shooting up from the hatch. This is a massive, excellent finale with a plethora of memorable shots. The wide helicopter shot of the raft launch, the crane shot of all the survivors on the beach observing the rising smoke in the distance, and of course the legendary final shot of the season as we slowly descend down into the hatch while Jack and Locke gaze downward, attempting to catch a glimpse at what lies inside the mysterious underground structure. This finale is packed with great moments. Sawyer informing Jack of the run-in he had with his father Christian is incredibly touching, and a very important moment in Sawyer and Jack's dynamic, as well as in Sawyer's journey to redemption. The raft launch scene is triumphant and unifying. Art's exploding is a classic moment, and the scene in which Smokey attempts to drag Locke down a hole is intense and enthralling. Walt being taken from the raft is one of Lost's most tension-filled, chilling, and jaw-dropping moments. The montage, primarily featuring our survivors boarding Oceanic 815 before they were survivors, is a wonderful, satisfying, and emotional amalgamation of all of the characters' flashbacks we've experienced leading up to this flight. The hatch door exploding off is visually thrilling, with a brilliant usage of slow-mo, and leads to the iconic shot that I mentioned earlier, which is the perfect season-ending cliffhanger. The opening of Season 2 is the perfect answer to the ending of Season 1. We were left with the question, what is inside the hatch? We're given the answer the second Season 2 begins, but we aren't aware that this opening scene takes place in the hatch until it is cleverly revealed at the end of the scene. The music used in the scene is wonderful, the direction is excellent, and the scene introduces one of Lost's greatest characters, Mr. Desmond Hume. I mentioned this amazing moment earlier in the review. Jack and company confront Tom and what is ultimately revealed to be a large quantity of others who are each eventually menacingly represented by Torchlight in the pitch black night. MC Gainey's delivery of these perfectly written lines is masterful and scary, and the abrupt disappearance of all the Torchlight and the others is as eerie and intimidating as when they initially appear. This episode is undoubtedly in my top 3 episodes of the series, as it tells the captivating backstory of the brilliant Desmond Hume. The episode also guest stars the great Clancy Brown as Kelvin, who also appeared in a flashback of Saeed's. This episode also features one of the show's most shocking revelations, that Desmond's failure to press the button on time is what crashed Oceanic 815. The There's a great amount of tension in the Jack, Michael, and company plotline as the group treks toward the others, and the Saeed, Sun, and Jin story gives us our first look at one of the island's most iconic landmarks, the four-toed statue. This sequence of scenes is phenomenal. The hatch implosion is intense, perfectly, chaotically directed, and although he had said a phrase similar to it earlier in the season, Desmond's "I'll see you in another life, brother" is cemented here as one of the show's iconic catchphrases. The scene on the docks, in which our heroes are held captive, is excellent, fantastically written, but the highlight of the scene is the incomparable Michael Emerson, who simply owns the screen every moment he's on it. He's subtly menacing and endlessly magnetic. The bags being pulled over our heroes' heads is a great, dour cliffhanger, and it forces you to come back for more. And the season is tagged with the perfect epilogue, as what turns out to be Penelope Whitmore's team find the island due to an electromagnetic anomaly detected, in other words, the implosion of the hatch. This is an important beat in the Desmond Penny love story, and a great narrative seed planted, which carries into Season 3, its finale specifically. Season 3's opening scene is conceptually similar to Season 2's opening, in that the location that we're in isn't revealed until the brilliant final moments of the scene. This opening introduces us to the great Juliet Burke, and wonderfully ties together Lost's first 3 seasons, in that we see Ben, or not Henry Gale at this point, send out Ethan and Goodwin for undercover missions. Of course, we've already witnessed Ethan's mission play out back in Season 1, and Goodwin's mission play out back in Season 2. And lastly, the cinematography of the scene was masterful, with an epic final shot. One of my favorite components of one of my favorite Lost characters, Desmond, is the fact that he is the gateway into the very sci-fi elements of the show. This episode is mind-bending, and it consistently maintains its emotional core. Henry Ian Cusick is amazing. I love our first appearance of the mysterious Eloise Hawking, and the ending cliffhanger is brilliant, and commences one of the season's most compelling plot points, Desmond's premonitions of Charlie's death. Sawyer's letter to the man who ruined and essentially ended his parents' lives. The man he one day plans to kill was set up back in Season 1, and the planting of this letter and the horrific story behind it was masterfully paid off in this great episode. This scene is phenomenally paced and packed with tension, and the official reveal that the devious original Mr. Sawyer is in fact John Locke's father, conman Anthony Cooper, is such a wild, exciting, intelligently and organically plotted moment. It adheres to the consistently prevalent theme of human interconnectedness, and the scene is incredibly performed by Josh Holloway and Kevin Teague. Sawyer choking the life out of Cooper with chains is so satisfying, and the theory of his before being strangled, that those on the island are in hell, is well implemented and delivered, and it really forces the viewer to question the true nature and function of the island upon your first go-round with the series. This episode is emotional, eerie, and unbelievably intriguing. Ben's backstory is truly one of Lost's greatest tales. All of the new characters to whom we're introduced are perfectly portrayed, namely Roger, who we've technically already met, Horace, and Annie. I love getting a taste of the island's past and the conflict between the others, or the hostiles, and the Dharma Initiative, and I dug the introduction of Richard's unaging mystery. And the scene in which Locke and Ben visit Jacob's cabin is excellent and peculiar to say the least, and an unfathomably important moment in the show and in the Ben-Locke dynamic. This episode also features a truly awesome ending, which comes in the form of Ben and the others taking out the Dharma Initiative. Firstly, Ben's murder of his father, Roger, whose skeleton Hugo discovers earlier in Season 3, is brilliant, and Emerson's performance is chilling. A gas-masked Ben walking through Dharmaville surrounded by corpses, with a beautiful and simple piano piece playing beneath it all, is haunting and captivating. I adore the structure of this episode as we learn of the top 5 greatest hits or greatest moments of Charlie's life. It's extremely emotional, in part due to Dominic Monaghan's really exceptional and vulnerable performance. It's a very powerful moment when Charlie takes in the immense weight of this inevitably fatal situation before diving into a section of water that is glowing with sunlight in this very ethereal way. Henry Ian Cusick's Desmond and Emily Duravan's Claire also shine in this episode. This magnificent two-parter is overflowing with amazing moments. Sawyer's act of vengeance in the form of shooting Tom dead before stating that's for taking the kid off the raft. So badass and satisfying. The trio of Sayid, Jin, and Bernard's mission to explode the others is cinematic and intense. I loved Hugo saving the day with the Dharma bus and Sayid snapping the other's neck with his legs. Charlie's death scene is extremely emotional. Speaking of Charlie's death, it's always slightly baffled me as to why I've seen some individuals confused as to why Charlie doesn't try to squeeze through that small hatch window in an attempt to perhaps avoid drowning, I suppose. Well, I guess these folks failed to view the first 8 episodes of Season 3, primarily episode 308 itself. It is revealed to us at episode 303's end that Desmond has acquired a psychic ability as a result of the failsafe's electromagnetic blast occurring right next to his brain. Then between episodes 3 and 8, we view some what at the time appeared to be peculiar actions, which turned out to be heroic actions, with the intention of saving Charlie from fatal mishaps witnessed through multiple premonitions. In 308 in particular, entitled Flashes Before Your Eyes, we view the events immediately following Desmond's turning of the failsafe key, the electromagnetic blast sending Desmond's consciousness back in time. He experiences a number of past events, feeling like a deja vu fueled mind trip, at which point he encounters the seemingly omnipotent Eloise Hawking. We later in the series learn the reasoning behind said omnipotence, which is great but not the focus of my current explanation. Eloise displays and then explains to Desmond that time/fate has a way of course correcting itself. If something is destined to happen, it will happen, despite any sort of attempt at avoiding said fate. As a result of Desmond acquiring this knowledge and applying it to his seemingly endless premonitions, Des realizes and informs Charlie of the fact that he has witnessed a vision in which oceanic survivors escaped the island via a helicopter, but said escape is preceded by Charlie's destined demise. Desmond realizes and states to Charlie that he has tried time and time again to avoid Charlie's fate, but his death is simply inevitable. Des states that Charlie's demise appears to him through a sequence of events, which concludes with whom he believes to be, and I believe assumes to be, Claire boarding a helicopter whilst holding baby Aaron. And without Charlie's death, this sequence of events would simply not come to pass. Remember, in certain instances, like in mid to late season 3, when Des and company ultimately discover Naomi, we experience Desmond's perspective whilst these flashes are occurring. What we see is quite erratic, super dynamic and overexposed, not clear-cut and linear. Desmond at one point refers to these flashes as pieces of an ultimate puzzle. So when Des informs Charlie that the sequence of events consisting of his inevitable death and concluding with quote-unquote Claire and baby Aaron boarding a helicopter, when what actually ends up happening is Son and Aaron and others board it off of the freighter, it is easy to infer, given the at least at times erratic and confusing nature of the flashes, that Des was partially mistaken with his premonition, as he very well could have caught a quick glimpse of Aaron being held in a helicopter in the arms of a woman. 308 ends with Des stating very matter-of-factly to Charlie that he has to die. If Charlie weren't to die, the sequence of events to which Desmond refers, concluding with the rescue of certain 815 survivors, would not occur. So in conclusion, if Charlie were to attempt to evade drowning via that tiny window, not only would Desmond's foreseen chain of events be unpredictably altered, but Charlie's death simply would have occurred anyway, just in a different fashion. Remember what Eloise said to Desmond in regards to the individual whose death she predicted but did not prevent. Had this person not gotten crushed by scaffolding, as we see, he would have gotten hit by a bus. Had he not been hit by a bus, he would have fallen in the shower and broken his neck. Time/fate has a way of course correcting. In my opinion, this scene is the most brilliant, the cleverest in television history. Firstly, it's a spectacular twist. The fact that for 70 episodes, we've been viewing flashback-centric stories, only to have it revealed at the tail end of the season finale that the entirety of Jack's story in this two-parter is a flash forward, taking place after having been rescued from the island. It is a genius narrative choice, and it brings about such excitement for what's next, as it organically forces the viewer to ask themselves, did any other other of the Oceanic 815 survivors get off the island? Is the he to whom Kate refers a rescued Sawyer? And how did the usually courageous and optimistic Jack get to this grim, deeply depressed mental state? The added, unexpected dimension displayed here in the character of Jack really made him one of my favorite characters in Lost. It's one thing to have a great actor, which Matthew Fox certainly is. It's another thing for a great actor to portray a brilliantly fleshed out character who we see endure a complex and powerful emotional journey. The final scene of season 3 gave us a hint of this new layer of emotional complexity from Jack Shephard. Not to mention, it provides us with one of Lost's most legendary quotes: "We have to go back." Alright, it's time for the countdown of my top 23 favorite characters. We'll finish off this review with the first half before completing the countdown in part 2 of this review. L. Scott Caldwell and Sam Anderson give wonderful and lovable performances. Rose is such a warm presence, and her incredibly sweet relationship with Bernard so genuinely represents the heartfelt core and message of the show, that what matters more than anything is true love and human connection and togetherness. Kevin Durand gives this simultaneously intimidating and intriguing performance as the ruthless Keamy. Keamy works brilliantly as one of season 4's big antagonists, as he is menacing, a physical force, and he is a serious threat who does tangible, fatal damage. Martin Keamy was really effectively utilized. I absolutely love Jeff Fahey's portrayal of Lapidus. I dig his energy, his presence, his quips, and the authentic comedic levity he brings to the show's last few seasons. Not to mention Frank serves an effective function in a show like this, as he is a skilled pilot. First and foremost, Ken Leung is a really great actor. His written dialogue is often sarcastic and subtly hilarious. I love the dynamic that develops between Miles and Sawyer in particular, as well as Miles and Hugo. The Pierre Chang familial connection is brilliant, and Miles' ability to communicate with the dead is intriguing, interestingly depicted, and effectively utilized. MC Gainey is phenomenally talented, though I think my favorite aspect of this character is the evolution of our perception of him. In the season 1 finale, he's presented and comes off as scary and ominous. He maintains this menacing aura when he and the others confront Jack and company in mid-season 2, but in the season 2 finale, his fake beard is removed, and through season 3, and momentarily in season 4, we're exposed to a friendlier side of Tom. He is still antagonistic, but has these spurts of likability that I never thought I'd see from this initially ominous and shadowy figure. That to me is such a creative choice, not to depict the evolution of this character, but to evolve the viewer's perception of Tom as his run progresses. This wonderful character is not only beautifully portrayed, but also so individual and unique, and he has such a powerful, commanding, and distinct presence. The echo-centric episodes are particularly captivating, namely episode 210, the 23rd Psalm, and episode 305, the Cost of Living, both of which feature the smoke monster, whom evidently takes quite an interest in Echo. I adore Mr. Echo's connection to the island in regards to the drug smuggling plane, which once carried his brother Yemi. I also find the Echo-Locke dynamic to be one of the show's most interesting. The romantic relationship between these two fantastic characters is undoubtedly the show's best developed, most multi-dimensional, and ultimately most impactful. Yoonjin Kim and Daniel Dae Kim are exceptional in their roles, and both of their characters grow and change and individually experience arduous emotional journeys. All the while, their relationship improves and becomes stronger and more loving. I adore and respect the persistence of both Sun and Jin as they each fight to be together after the following occurs. The two are separated from one another between the end of season 4 and 2/3 of the way into season 6. Sun believes Jin to be dead for 3 years. Jin travels back and forth through time, all the while continuing to learn the English language. Sun's evolution is drastic and engrossing, as at the show's commencement, Sun is kind of mousy and under the control of Jin, who is a bit of an asshole at the time. Flash forward to season 5, and Sun is a confident badass who refuses to give up on her goal of reuniting with her incredibly sweet and endlessly caring husband Jin. All of the musical themes and cues associated with this wonderful pair are powerful and impactful. The simultaneous deaths of these characters is emotional and tragic, but it is an eerily beautiful end to their love story. Juliet has a captivating duology in her introductory season, number 3. When we were first introduced to her, she's quite emotional, seemingly anxious, and we empathize with her. A couple minutes later, literally, it is revealed that she is an other. Juliet continues to be a genuine sympathetic underdog in the 2 season 3 Juliet-centric episodes, number 7, Not in Portland, and number 16, One of Us, a pair of momentous, enthralling episodes. But in much of the On Island season 3 Juliet content, she appears cold, difficult to read, and slightly, or at least potentially, sinister. But in the season 3 finale, she makes it very clear she's on the side of good. She continues to be bold, brave, and badass through season 4, and in season 5, at least briefly, we get to see a side of Juliet that's genuinely content. Although her relationship with Sawyer is technically short-lived for us as viewers, it is nonetheless incredibly sweet, organic, and evidently effective, as when the romantic relationship is forced to come to an end as a result of Juliet's death, I, as well as millions of others, were simply heartbroken. And that is even a bit of an understatement. I absolutely love Jacob's exceedingly mysterious and ominous aura prior to his much anticipated physical appearance. Although we don't see Jacob through season 3 and 4 and much of season 5, he maintains this very powerful, supernatural, prevalent presence. Now, his physical presence, featured between the penultimate episode of the 5th season and the penultimate episode of the series, is excellently and satisfyingly handled. Mark Pellegrino gives this great layered performance. Much of the time, Jacob seems confident, godlike, all-knowing, mysterious, at times arrogant. But in episode 615, Across the Sea, when we delve into Jacob's past, we learn that at least at one time, he's jealous, vulnerable, wears his broken heart on his sleeve. Jacob is simply perfectly and intriguingingly built up. His physical introduction is beautifully executed and timed in regards to its placement, the last episode prior to the final season. They, the writers, take this endlessly interesting concept and transform it into a wonderfully portrayed, complex character who is phenomenally utilized. What instantly hooked me to Faraday was Jeremy Davies' wonderfully unique performance. Daniel, alongside Desmond, of course, with whom he has a captivating dynamic, is really the gateway to Lost's sci-fi component. His connection to and relation to Eloise Hawking is, in retrospect, such a sensible and effective creative decision. It is also unfathomably tragic and complex, as displayed in the show's brilliant 100th episode titled The Variable, which is mind-bending and emotional. Daniel Faraday is imperative to Lost, and is undoubtedly one of the show's most memorable characters. I was instantly drawn to Nestor Carbonell's very calm and collected performance when he was introduced near the beginning of season 3, but my fascination with Richard skyrocketed when it is brilliantly revealed near the end of season 3 that Alpert is an unaging man. This reveal created this unspoken, apart from a few allusions between season 3 and 5, kind of eerie aura about him. I very much appreciate that as the show progresses, Richard becomes more and more prevalent. Now, episode 9 of the final season features Alpert's long-awaited backstory. In said backstory, Nestor Carbonell gives a compelling, vulnerable, and raw performance that adds a great dimension to Richard. Essentially, every answer given in regards to Alpert's past and ability is so very satisfying and fantastically executed. Dominic Monaghan is really exceptional in this role. Charlie is a complex, wonderfully defined character, and a number of the episodes centered on his past. Episode 107, The Moth, episode 115, Homecoming, episode 321, Greatest Hits, are really powerful, emotional character pieces. Charlie's relationship with Claire is one of the show's best. It's incredibly sweet and genuine, and I adore the fact that Charlie Pace is given a brave and noble hero's end. He went out doing the one thing he was so desperate to do, take care of someone. In this case, multiple people. And Charlie's death scene is very memorable and powerful, thanks in part due to the fact that one of Michael Giacchino's most legendary pieces, Life and Death, plays beneath it. First and foremost, I love Danielle's non-physical introduction way back in Pilot Part 2, when our main characters hear Danielle's distress call that had been playing on loop for 16 years. She's an interesting, individualistic, and badass character. She's also phenomenally portrayed by Mia Furlan. I couldn't imagine anyone else in the role. Danielle's death is abrupt and shocking, but also extraordinarily effective for a couple reasons. Number one, the character's story is essentially complete at the time of her demise, demise in 408. She's been reunited with her daughter, who had been kidnapped years prior. She has the opportunity to leave the island at the end of season 3, but decides to stay put, stating that the island is her home. And shortly before she's killed, she returns to the radio tower where she had recorded her distress call 16 years prior, and puts an end to the call looping. A nice full circle moment for Danielle. Number 2, the death serves the story in multiple ways. It shows just how immense a threat the freighter mercenaries are, and it serves as a jaw-dropping, unexpected cliffhanger. It also provides versatility in the death department. Let me elaborate. Lost throughout its run depicts a plethora of character deaths. There are certain death scenes that really take their time and are tremendously emotional, with Giacchino tickling the ivories in the background, such as Charlie's death, Sun and Jin, Jack. But if that's how every single solitary character demise was depicted, things may seem stale, derivative, perhaps gimmicky. A death such as Danielle's makes the show feel unpredictable and daring, keeps you on your toes. But Danielle's death doesn't mark the last time we see this character. Rousseau is brilliantly implemented in the 5th season. While much of the time we learn of backstories through flashbacks, we get to witness Rousseau's past via time travel. It's really cleverly handled, and it's simply really cool seeing the stories Rousseau told back in season 1 come to life.